All right, we are on to the 29th Sutra. And this is definitely progressive. So we were, just to recap, we went through the sounding of the word and through the reflection upon its meaning, the way is found. And now, from this comes the realization of the self or the soul and the removal of all obstacles. And before we even get into this, when I see the removal of all obstacles, there's a little bit of a connotation of pain involved in that, and a little bit of distress, because we'll see what's going to happen here. So when the master within is known, the assertion of his power becomes increasingly felt, and the aspirant submits his entire lower nature to the control of that new ruler. It should be noted here that the eventual complete removal of all obstacles transpires after the initial flash of realization. The sequence of happenings is as follows. 1, there's aspiration after knowledge of the soul. 2, realization of the obstacles or an understanding of the things which prevent true knowledge. 3, intellectual comprehension as to the nature of those obstacles. And 4, determination, determination to eliminate them. 5, a sudden flash or vision of the soul reality. 6, fresh aspiration and a strong determination to make that fleeting vision a permanent reality in the lower plane experience. 7, the battle of the Kurukshetra with Krishna, the soul, heartening Arjuna, the aspirant, on to steady and continuous effort. The same thought is to be found in the Old Testament in the case of Joshua before the walls of Jericho. It might be well here to conclude this comment with Sutras 31 through 34 of Book 4, as far as what we were just getting into. Okay, so we're going to conclude this comment with those. The 31st Sutras from the 4th book is when, through the removal of the hindrances and the purification of all the sheets, through the removal of the hindrances and the purification of all the sheets, the totality of knowledge becomes available, not further remains for the man to do. 32, the modifications of the mind or qualities of matter through the inherent nature of the 3 gunas come to an end, for they have served their purpose. 33, a time which is the sequence of the modifications of the mind, likewise terminates, giving place to the eternal now. And 34, the state of isolated unity becomes possible when the 3 qualities of matter, the 3 gunas or potencies of nature, no longer exercise any hold over the self. The pure spiritual consciousness withdraws into the one. This is like we had talked about when we had finished Glamour, a world problem. I really didn't know what book we were going to get into, and I read. I went through a bunch of the books to see which one was the natural progression for what we're trying to accomplish here, which is building an understanding of the esoteric and shifting our perspectives. And and I take no credit in this whatsoever at all. I just simply was scanning all these books. And as I got into the very last one, which is The Light of the Soul, it didn't take long to realize this is the one that we should do next. And it was like a, like a flashing sign, essentially. And then as we get into these, I am blown away by how profound this material is. There are many really deep things in this book that I'm finding that were not in, that are not necessarily in the other books, but this book brings, it brings them together. And I want to say this is more of one of the more obscure books because it's based on the sutras. But in this, you have all of these, this commentary by the master, by Alice Bailey, and it has there are secrets that are scattered through these books, and this book has a lot of power to bring them together. It's really awesome. That's all I want to say. I'm blown away by these things. He's making so many things clear and bringing so many things together. Even these little understandings. This is, this is huge stuff. And then this is the process explained in a completely different way here. This unfolding and how that unfolding is affecting the aspirant. And now all these, now for the removal of obstacles. It's like, bam, bam. All right, we're hitting these checkpoints, and then this is what's next. And then if we're at, if we potentially have witnessed these things in our life already, to some point. So we can see that the truth in this, there is truth in all of these books, but we can see that this is our life. And even if it's not in our experience yet, it's going to be in our experience because of all of those who've done this before. And all these books were basically written by those who have done it before. And it's a culmination of all of all of the experience. So when you get to see some of your own life experience explained, it's always great, but then to know kind of where it goes is unbelievable. All right, I didn't mean to get off on that, but on that topic, but this is great. Okay, I'm excited. I'm excited to read this book. I'm more excited than I ever imagined I would have been. If we're excited, this is what life is about. So I should say, in a lot of ways, Earth life. So, all right, 30, the 30th sutra. The obstacles to soul cognition are bodily disability, mental inertia, wrong questioning, carelessness, laziness, lack of dispassion, erroneous perception, inability to achieve concentration, failure to hold the meditative attitude when achieved. Okay, so obstacle 1, bodily disability. It is interesting to note that the first obstacle has relation to the physical body. Okay, it's always there's always a method. Aspirants would do well to remember this and should seek to adjust the physical vehicle to the demands later to be made upon it. These adjustments will be great, and they fall into 4 groups. 1, the rendering of the body immune to the attacks of disease or indisposition. The rendering of the body immune to the attacks of disease. This is in itself a triple process involving the eradication of present disease. You notice he's telling you to get rid of your disease and find out what it is and get rid of it. And you can do this. That's how I take this. And I believe this to be 100% true. The refining and the purifying of the body so as to rebuild it eventually. We've seen Dr. Strange, and there's a deep kind of a hidden, in that guy who had all of the the problems in the beginning when he was playing basketball. And he said, you shouldn't be walking, and he was running around playing ball, and then we found out that he was holding his body together basically through magic. Later on, it said that, and then Strange himself recovers from his tremendous injuries, and a lot of us who are on this journey have had serious traumas, and I assume many of us recovered from it. And we have the protection of the body from future attack and its utilization as a vehicle of the soul. 2, we have the strengthening and refining of the etheric body in order that it may be finally tuned up so that the work of force direction may be safely undertaken. The disciple has to pass the forces used in his work through his body. Three, the unfoldment and awakening of the centers in the etheric body, the centralization of the fires of the body, and their progression up the spine in order to make union with the fire of the soul. And then 4, we have the coordination of the physical body and its 2 divisions and its subsequent alignment with the soul via the sutratma, or the thread, which is the magnetic link. And it's interesting to note here, just in this stuff, but this third adjustment, it says the third adjustment spoken of can only safely be undertaken after the first 3 means of yoga have been used and developed. The awakening of the centers, that's a science in and of itself. But it's happening naturally as we work with this material and building this higher vibration into the body. I would just simply say, I'm going to say a pretty obscure thing that, that has been told to me. So I'll say it. You'd be amazed by how much help we have on this path. Because remember, in the last set of sutras that we went through, it explains that there's, an order, and everybody kind of works with other disciples, whether we really know it consciously or not. We're working with other disciples, aspirants and initiates at different levels. Everybody has, everybody falls in line. And it should be noted that we're being helped, and I guess we can leave it at that, because I can't really speak to it too much, but you can imagine that it has to do, and the process of initiation has to do with the adjustment of the centers and the raising of them and such and such. So the third adjustment can only be safely undertaken after the first 3 means of yoga have been used and developed. These are the 5 commandments. And we'll get to this sutra here. 5 rules and right poise. Let's see here. So 28 and 29. When the means to yoga have been steadily practiced and when impurity has been overcome, enlightenment takes place leading up to full illumination. And now comes a practical, then comes the practical part of the book. But I'm looking for the means of yoga coming out. Okay, here we go. Let's see. The 8 means of yoga are the commandments or yama, the rules or nijama, posture or asana, right control of life force or pranayama, abstraction or pratyahara, attention or dharana, meditation or dhyana, and contemplation or samadhi. And then it goes through what these are, and I think, we're going to wait to get into that until we get to those sutras. But now I know what they are. So then we have the 5 commandments, 5 rules, and right poise. Those are all right. So we'll get to that in the second book, which is the practical application. This is a point often forgotten by aspirants to yoga, and hence the disasters and trouble so often seen amongst those who prematurely occupy themselves with the awakening of the centers and the arousing of the serpent fire. Only when the entire relation of the aspirant to the social economy, as dealt with in the commandments, only when the entire relation of the aspirant to the social economy, only when the task of purifying and regulating the threefold lower nature has been worked at, and only as a balanced and controlled condition of the emotional nature has been brought about and right poise achieved, can the aspirant to Raja Yoga safely proceed to the more esoteric and occult work connected with the fires of his little system. This point cannot be too strongly emphasized. Only at a very advanced stage of discipleship will it be safe for the man to deal consciously with the vital fires and direct their right progression up the spine. Few there are as yet who have kept the law and the commandments. Yeah, well, it's because we're all very anxious, right? And selfish. So, all right, obstacle 2 is mental inertia. The next great basic obstacle, for these obstacles are given in the order of their relative power over the average man, is inability to think clearly about the problem of attainment. Unless clear thinking precedes action, insufficient momentum will be found coupled with failure to appreciate the magnitude of the problem. And boy, is it ever. You've got to lift yourself up by your bootstraps. Literally, you have to make the impossible possible. Mental inertia is due to the lethargic condition of the vesture of consciousness, which we call the mental body, and to the heavy rate of rhythm found in most people. This is the reason why Raja Yoga necessarily makes a greater appeal to mental types than to pure devotees, and it accounts for the fact that those whose mental bodies are well equipped and actively used can more quickly be trained in the sacred science. For the majority of people, the awakening of the mental body, the development of an intellectual interest, and the substitution of mind control in place of control by the emotions has to precede any later realization of the need of soul culture. The apparatus of thought must be contacted and used before the nature of the thinker can be intelligently appreciated. And we learned that we're in this time. This is our work now, working through the mental plane. When this is realized, a contribution to human development by the great schools of thought we call mental science, Christian Science, New Thought, and other groups which lay the emphasis upon the mental states will be more justly appraised. The human family is only now becoming aware of the vesture of consciousness, which we call the mental body. The majority of men as yet to build that vesture, which occult students call the mental body, have as yet to build it. From among those who are doing so, the true Raja Yogins will be gathered. Obstacle 3, wrong questioning. This is the next stage and is also dependent upon a certain amount of mental development. Some translators call this doubt, this wrong questioning, is that which is based upon the lower perception and the identification of the real man with that illusory instrument, his mental body. This leads him to question the eternal verities, to doubt the existence of the fundamental realities, and to seek for the solution of his problems in that which is ephemeral and transitory, and in the things of the senses. There is a questioning which is right and proper. It is that asking of questions spoken of by Christ in the words, "Ask and ye shall receive." And that also sounds like invocation, the science of invocation and evocation. This faculty of inquiry is deliberately cultivated in their disciples by all true masters of the Orient. They are taught to formulate questions about the inner realities and then to find the answer for themselves. They search for that source of all knowledge latent at the heart of all beings. To ask intelligently and to find the answer, they must first free themselves from all outer imposed authority and from all tradition and from the imposition of every theological dogma, whether religious or scientific. Only thus can the reality be found and the truth be seen. We can't hold on to anything. We have to be essentially, we have to be very quiet and really clear and released magnetically from the attraction of these things we're talking about here. So when thy soul shall pass beyond the forest of delusion, thou shalt no more regard what shall be taught or what has been taught. And we're saying here, when the soul shall pass beyond the forest of delusion, you won't be looking for any of these teachings as have normally are given the average that were given to us before. When withdrawn from traditional teaching, thy soul shall stand steadfast, firm in soul vision, then thou shalt gain union with the soul. We have obstacle 4, which is carelessness. This attitude of mind dealt with here has been translated by some as light-mindedness. It is really that versatile mental attitude which makes one-pointedness and attention so difficult to achieve. It is literally the thought form-making tendency of the mind, which has also been described as the mind's tendency to flit from one object to another. And this world that we live in right now, with this high, with our minimal attention span, but also this, what the heck do we call it? Overstimulation, purposeful overstimulation is keeping us at this, at these points here. And then there's this victimization when they achieve their goals, essentially, and then we're being, in a very awkward way, and I don't want to discourage it, I don't want to be negative in any way, but there's every way here currently that we're trying to be suppressed, that our achievement of these things is trying to be suppressed, which is making us have to work that much harder and fight through these things, essentially fight through them that much harder. Because there's every way to distract us right now, and including through our food and our health. Right? It's unbelievable. And I'm sure you've seen at this point how this is happening. And if not, we do see it at some point, because we have to come to terms with all these things. We have to come to terms with all of it. So it's just like, let's get on with it. We'll look it all in the face and we deal on it. And then we reach, we move to equilibralize the thing. The fourth obstacle is laziness. All the commentators agree. Let me go back to here to carelessness. This is not your carelessness in your everyday life. This is not what we're talking about. This is not our, our work life. This is our ability. This is all related to the subjective, essentially. Laziness. All the commentators agree as to this translation, employing the terms sloth, languor, or laziness, which I assume this means the same. I've never seen this term before. I don't like passing up the opportunity to learn an additional word. It's a state or feeling, often pleasant, of tiredness or inertia. Often pleasant. He remembered the languor and warm happiness of those golden afternoons. There could be an oppressive stillness of the air. Well, we absorbed it. So this refers not so much to mental inertia, for it may accompany acute mental perception, as to that slothfulness of the entire lower man, which prevents him from measuring up to the intellectual recognition and the inner aspiration. The aspirant has been told what he has to do. The means of yoga have been clear to him. He has glimpsed the ideal and is aware of the obstacles. He knows theoretically just what steps he has to take, but there is no correspondence between his activity and his knowledge. There is a gap between his aspiration and his performance. Though he longs to achieve and to know, it is too hard work to fulfill the conditions. His will is not yet strong enough to force him forwards. He permits time to slip by and does nothing. And that, from where we sit now, this is unacceptable to us, I would assume. This hits home pretty hard, is what I'm saying. So the obstacle 6, lack of dispassion. This has been well translated by some as addiction to objects. This is the desire for material and sensuous things. It is love of sense perceptions and attraction for all that brings a man back again and again into the condition of physical plane existence. The disciple has to cultivate dispassion, or that attitude which never identifies itself with forms of any kind, but which is ever detached and aloof freed from limitations imposed by possessions and belongings. This is covered in many places in various sutras and need not be enlarged upon here. This is covered in many places in the various sutras and in various other practices, and I would dare almost say every practice, including Christianity. Because what does Jesus say? Drop your, he basically says, give up your stuff and follow me. Give it away. Give up your stuff, give it away, and follow me. Is basically, if anyone would come after me, let him deny himself and take up his cross and follow me. For whoever would save his life will lose it, but whoever loses his life for my sake will find it. So that's this is well known, and I can't, we don't. I don't know how to say this. It's hard to say. We don't believe that there's changes take place. Essentially, in the beginning, we have to have faith, right? Like maybe you have an addiction to something, and you think, well, why would I stop this, or how would I stop this, or how is this wrong? Is there something wrong with this? I don't see the problem with it. This is all just love, or, this is just another expression. And then, so we kind of we work through these phases of all this stuff. And we think, it's not that big of a deal. But you're still being pulled, because you're thinking about it, you're still being pulled to let it go. And then in that, so you're going back and forth with yourself, you're fighting, there's this fight in ourselves about letting this stuff go, because the matrix has you in that aspect, whatever that object or whatever that attraction might be. And then we wonder, can it ever really be gone? Can we ever really become clear? And does this really work? And it's so subtle and gradual as these things happen. As you're released from these things, it takes some time, so you don't necessarily realize that you've been released from them, because you're no longer even thinking about them, because you've been released from them. So then there's this recognition at some point that, oh, I did work and fight through that, and now it's gone. And it's not just gone, it's like it was never there. And there's no attraction back to it. But I was told this is where we stay the course. We have to, really walk the line, razor's edge path, because if, like a little child, you were to go walk off and go try things again that you have already worked through giving up, then you could get sucked back into ignorance, essentially. And now you've got this, it's got power and magnetic attraction again, and you've set yourself back on the path, essentially, and caused great delay of our growth. So this lack of dispassion, the lack of dispassion proves true. It does work. And this material, that Alice, this from the Masters, Alice Bailey, this works. It does. It's very exciting. We have to have faith, but eventually that it turns into knowledge and wisdom and knowing, and it is real, which is why we keep studying. because we know it's we're not holding on to anything. We're holding on to nothing, but we're still in process. What are you going to do? We're not going to a cave. We're not going to go meditate and do nothing. We're going to continue to work, and we're going to continue to find the others, and we're going to continue to talk about these things and grow ourselves, and all of that. So we're not necessarily like addicted to this either, though. We're not attached in a negative way. If anything, you're one of the new group of world servers, and you're becoming group conscious. So there's that. But then we move on to obstacle 7, which is erroneous perception, which sounds very Neptunian or something here to me in a way where, and very astral, where we believe things that are not true, very much glamour and illusion. So let's see what we got here. This inability to perceive correctly and to vision things as they are, as they really are, is the natural outcome of the 6 previous obstacles. Okay. As long as the thinker identifies himself with form, as long as the lesser lives of the lower vestures of consciousness can hold him enthralled, and as long as he refuses to separate himself from the material aspect, just so long will his perceptions remain erroneous. Vision is of various kinds, and these might be enumerated as follows. Physical vision reveals the nature of the physical plane and is achieved through the medium of the eyes. Photographing through the lens of the eye, the aspect of the tangible form upon the wonderful film which every man possesses. It is circumscribed and limited. And then we have etheric vision. This is a rapidly developing faculty of the human eye, which ultimately will reveal the health aura of all forms in the 4 kingdoms of nature, which will bring about recognition of the vital pranic emanations of all living centers and will make manifest the conditions of the centers. And then we have clairvoyance. This is the faculty of sight upon the astral plane and is one of the lower cities or psychic powers. It is achieved through the surface sensibility of the entire body of feeling, the emotional sheath, and is sensuous perception carried to a very advanced condition. It is misleading, and apart from its higher correspondence, which is spiritual perception, it is the very apotheosis of Maya or illusion. And then we have symbolic vision. This is a faculty of the mental body and the factor which produces the seeing of colors, of geometrical symbols, 4th dimensional sight, and those dreams and visions which are the result of mental activity and not of astral light. Frequently, these visions have a quality of prevision. These 4 types of vision are the cause of wrong perception and will only produce illusion and error until that time when the higher forms of vision enumerated below supersede them. These higher forms of sight include the others. We have pure vision. This is spoken of by Patanjali in the words, okay, the seer is pure knowledge, gnosis. The pure, though pure, he looks upon the presented idea through the medium of the mind. The words pure knowledge have been translated pure vision. This vision is the faculty of the soul, which is pure knowledge and is manifest when the soul uses the mind as its instrument of vision. Charles Johnson translates the same sutra as follows: the seer is pure vision. He looks out through the vesture of the mind. It is that clear apprehension of knowledge and a perfect comprehension of the things of the soul, which is characteristic of the man who, through concentration and meditation, has achieved mind control. The mind then becomes the window of the soul, and through it, the spiritual man can look out onto a new and higher realm of knowledge. Simultaneously with the development of this type of vision, the pineal gland becomes active, and the third eye and etheric matter develops with a paralleling activity. And we have spiritual vision or true perception. This type of vision opens up the world of the intuitional or Buddhic plane and takes its possessor beyond the abstract levels of the mental plane to things of pure spirit, and the basic purposes underlying all manifestation are thus realized, just as pure vision permitted its owner to tap the resources of pure wisdom. With the development of this vision, the Alta Major Center becomes active and the thousand-petaled lotus unfolded. And then we have cosmic sight. This is of a nature inconceivable to man and characterizes the realization of those existences who manifest through the medium of a planetary scheme and a solar system, just as a man manifests through his bodies. By the study of these types of perception, the student will arrive at a just appreciation of the work he has to do. He is thus aided to place himself where he at present stands, and consequently to prepare intelligently for the next step forward. And it's interesting because we're seeing this unfoldment explained to us here. And if we were to really look here, you're looking again at the Constitution of Man chart, and we're looking from the bottom up here through these. We're looking at actually this being the first plane, and then working down into the physical plane or etheric plane here. Obstacle 8 is the inability to achieve concentration. The two last obstacles indicate the way whereby old things can pass away and the new man come into his heritage. The method of the disciple must not only include self-discipline or the subjugation of the vestures or sheaths, nor must it only include service or identification with group consciousness, but it must also include the two stages of concentration, focusing or control of the mind, and meditation, the steady process of pondering upon what the soul has contacted and knows. These two will later be dealt with and will not be further touched upon here. Yeah, that's our ability to ponder and contemplate should be fostered, and we should spend time doing that. We need that time we need our meditations in the morning, and if Rumi says that the morning breeze has secrets to tell you, don't go back to sleep, and that's very true. That's when you're running most clear, essentially, and you will get our work for the day almost in a smaller version of in the smaller cycle of things. And we should spend some time doing nothing. You've heard that many times. And doing nothing, it also, includes pondering on the soul and these things. And, as the Advaita, as the Vedantists would say, who am I, and inquiry and stuff. And this is all connected. You can see that. They call it the self, they do inquiry, and we're calling it the soul, and we're meditating and contemplating and pondering. So everything is, it's all lines up. The puzzle is already put together, just the pieces are flipped upside down. So we just have to turn the pieces over as we come to them. And these are the obstacles. This is the obstacle. So obstacle 9, failure to hold the meditative attitude. It will be apparent, therefore, that the first 6 obstacles deal with wrong conditions, and the last 3 with the results of those conditions. They contain a hint as to the method whereby liberation from the wrong states of consciousness can be effected. The next sutra is most interesting as it deals with the effect produced in each of the 4 bodies of the lower nature in the case of the man who has not overcome the obstacles. They contain a hint as to the method whereby liberation from the wrong states of consciousness can be effected. And I wonder if we picked up on all of them. Right, so. I mean, this is the 6th obstacle, and that's the hint. To dedicate ourselves, to surrender to this work, essentially. I don't know, surrender might not be a right word here, but to really give ourselves to the process, and don't get in the way. Right. Second. Oh, it's interesting. I'm sorry. I've got something going on that I have to keep pausing this. I'll be right back. Okay, I'm back. Sorry about that again. I thought getting started at 8 this morning would have been good, but I guess we've had about as much delay as we've gotten work in so far. So let's, we're on Sutra 31. Pain, despair, misplaced bodily activity, and wrong direction or control of the life currents are the results of the obstacles in the lower psychic nature. Each of these 4 results expresses the condition of the lower man. They deal with the effects of wrong centralization or identification. One is pain. Pain is the effect produced when the astral or emotional body is wrongly polarized. Pain is the outcome of failure to balance correctly the pairs of opposites. It indicates lack of equilibrium. And then we have despair. Despair. Now, all right. Before we get into these things, I might just say that when we have these little illnesses, little things happen in the body, and I have been told that they are little nudges to show where that there's a little problem with something, and these are little things to be worked out. And this pain right here being a lack of equilibrium and failure to balance correctly the pairs of opposites, that is very interesting. Especially if you're accustomed to any level, previous or level of pain going into it. We have despair is an effect of remorse produced in the mental body and is itself a characteristic of what might be called the unregulated mental nature. The aspirant has a perception of what might be, though the obstacles as yet overcome him, he is ceaselessly conscious of failure, and this engenders in him a condition of remorse, of disgust, despair, and of despondency. So despair is in the mental body, whereas where pain is in the astral or emotional pain. Okay, misplaced bodily activity. The inner condition works out on the physical plane, okay, as an intense activity, a violent seeking for solution or for solace. This is the seeking energy as far as I can see, or constant running hither and thither in search of peace. This is what's known as the seeking energy, I want to say, of the Vedantist or the non-dualist. It is the main characteristic at this time of our mental Aryan race and is the cause of the aggressive intensity of endeavor found in all walks of life. To this, the educational processes have been largely contributory factors. To this educational process, as they speed up the mental body, have been largely contributory factors. The great contribution of education in schools, colleges, universities, and other allied activities has been to stimulate the mental bodies of men. It is all part of the great plan, working ever towards the one objective, soul unfoldment. But it's also an avenue where we can be deceived, right? So there's that duality there in a sense, but if the work is being done, it's being done, right? So who's to say what needs to be focused on in order for the work to get done? Can it be done through analogy or metaphor, which we kind of know it can be. Up to a certain point, it certainly can. From where I sit. So it's all part of the plan. So even if the education system is distorted, maybe the work is still being done. Maybe not as efficiently or whatever, however we think would be best or whatever, but it's being done. So we can withhold we can probably withhold judgment from that, I'd say. Wrong directions of the life currents. This is the effect produced in the etheric body by the inner turmoil. These life currents for the student of occultism are two in number. The life breath or prana and the life force or the fires of the body. It is the misuse of the life breath or wrong utilization of prana that is cause for 80% of the present physical diseases. The other 20% is produced through the ill-directed life force through the centers and attacks primarily the 20% of humanity, which can be called mentally polarized. The clue for the student of occultism who aspires to liberation is not to be found in breathing exercises, however, nor in any work with the 7 centers in the body. It will be found in an intense inner concentration upon rhythmic living and in the careful organization of the life. As he does this, coordination of the subtler bodies with the physical body on the one hand and with the soul on the other will eventuate in the automatic subsequent adjustment of pranic and vital energies. This is a working out. I see it. This is a working out. These things all have to be wrought out in the daily. And what does he say? In the crucible of daily living. All right, let's get on to the 32nd sutra. To overcome the obstacles and their accompaniments, the intense application of the will to some one truth is required. It would be wise here if the aspirant to yoga would note that there are 7 ways whereby peace may be achieved and thus the goal be reached. These 7 are next dealt with, and each has a distinct relation to the 7 obstacles earlier considered. The obstacle being bodily disability can be remedied by wholesome, sane living. Mental inertia can be fixed by the control of the life force. Wrong question can be remedied by one-pointed thought. Carelessness can be averted by meditation. Laziness fixed by self-discipline. A lack of dispassion would require correct analysis. An erroneous perception and an illusion is, as we know from glamour, is fixed by illumination. And we can look at these obstacles at some level of glamour, Maya, the dweller on the threshold, illusion. These corrections of wrong conditions are of profound importance in the early stages of yoga, and hence their emphasis in Book 1. But a theoretical understanding of the obstacles and their cure is of small avail as long as the intense application of the will is omitted. Only the constant, steady, enduring effort of the will functioning through the mind will suffice to bring the aspirant out of darkness into light and to lead him from the condition of death into immortality. Once the principle is understood, then the disciple can work intelligently, and hence the necessity of a right understanding of the principles or qualities where the truth regarding reality or God can be known. All forms exist in order to express truth. By the steady application of God's will in the whole is truth revealed through the medium of matter. When the truth or basic principle is known, spirit will then stand revealed. When the disciple realizes what principle his various forms, sheaths, or bodies are intended to express, then he will know how to direct his will with exactitude so as to bring about the desired conditions. The sheets and vehicles are simply his bodies of manifestation on the various planes of the system, and those sheets must express the principle which is the characteristic or quality underlying each plane. And this is fantastic because we're about to be shown this. The 7 principles with which man is concerned are prana, vital energy, etheric body, and the physical plane. We're supposed to be expressing intelligent desire and feeling from the astral body, the lower mind. I'm not sure if I thought we were going to show what was supposed to be expressed here, but I guess this is what we're expressing. or these other names for them. And that which corresponds to the boundless immutable principle in the microcosm, the monad on its own plane, constitute the seventh principle. And that's the monadic plane, right? Yeah, the atmic being spiritual will. Okay, yeah, got it. There are other ways of enumerating the principles. For the Subarao is correct in one respect when he says there are only 5 principles. The 2 highest, Atma and life, monadic, are not principles at all. I have not read much of Subarao. I don't. Subaru. I don't know. Through the conscious utilization of the will on each plane, the vehicle is directed constantly into an increasingly accurate expression of the one truth. This is the true significance of the sutra under consideration and the clue to why the adepts are as yet still studying this treatise on yoga. Their understanding of truth in its entirety is not yet complete on all planes, and the basic rules hold good throughout. Though they are variously applied, principles are applicable to all differentiations and to all states of being. As a man studies the spheres in which his consciousness is functioning, as he comes to an understanding of the vehicles, he must use any particular sphere as he awakens to a knowledge of the specific divine quality which the body is intended to express as part or aspect of the one truth or reality. He becomes aware of the inadequacies present, of the obstacles which hinder, and of the difficulties which must be surmounted. Then comes the application of the will and its concentration upon the principle or upon the quality seeking expression. Thus the lower manifestation is brought into line with the higher, for as man thinketh, so he is. Now that's a very interesting concept there that we touched upon to whatever plane we're on. That's where we're working through. That's what we're working through, right? So when we're on the astral plane, we, I guess it's just slightly above from it, or we're trying to analyze it, to find it, to figure out what it's about, and to work through it as to express the higher qualities of it before we move out of it. And then as we're in the mental plane, we're really looking at all the concrete knowledge in the lower mind, and that's helping us here. But then we're also trying to work towards understanding all what is in the mind, and what is the mind, what's in the mind, and that connection with the soul is what is ultimately required there to help us understand the abstract mind, because the soul sits on the third subplane of the mental plane of the 7. 1, 2, 3 down is where the soul sits. At the top of that is the mental permanent atom. At which point I assume we are then learning what is in the Buddhic vehicle and what is in and how the intuitional body is functioning. We're learning about that now. So whatever grade we're in, that's what what plane, you could say, you can correlate grades to planes, and that's what we're working on in that plane. These subjects, these topics, it can be absolutely correlated to the education system in a way, every way, probably, because we know that this is a reflection of a reflection of a reflection. So, all right, the 33rd Sutra. All right, the peace of the chitta or mind stuff can be brought about through the practice of sympathy, tenderness, steadiness of purpose, and dispassion in regard to pleasure or pain, or towards all forms of good or evil. In this sutra, we are dealing with the physical body, which undergoes experiences on the physical plane and which utilizes the brain consciousness. The tendency of that body is towards all other objective forms, and it is apt, in its unregenerate state, to gravitate with facility towards material objects. The nature of those objects will be dependent upon the point in evolution of the experiencing ego. This must be carefully remembered when studying this sutra. Otherwise, there will be a misapprehension of the final clause. Discriminative action must ever be taken with reference to all demonstrations of good and evil force, and the law works in this connection, but emancipation from all the physical forms which that energy may take eventuates when dispassion towards these objective forms, is practiced. It might be useful if we note that the sympathy dealt with concerns our relation to the hierarchy of the planet, and dispassion concerns our attitude to all the reactions of the lower personal self. The comprehensiveness of this sutra is therefore apparent and concerns all the brain vibrations of the disciple. The body is consequently looked upon as a vehicle for the expression of, okay, this is good. Now we're getting into the expression stuff. Helpfulness to our fellow men, tender handling of the animal kingdom, service on the physical plane in cooperation with the hierarchy, discipline of the physical appetites, and dispassion in regard to all forms which appeal to the appetites and to the senses, whether called harmful or not. All alike must be transcended. Thus, peace is achieved, peace of the chitta or mind stuff, peace of the brain reactions, and eventually complete quiet and calm. That idea is well covered by Charles Johnson in the words of his translation of the sutra. The psychic nature moves to gracious peace, and the man expresses wholesomeness, a rounded out nature, and complete sanity of thought and act. All bodily disability is in this way overcome, and wholeness expresses the nature of the manifestation. That was fast. I'm sorry. I'm getting text messages over here. So it's, just the middle of the day, and there's work to be done on the physical plane, I suppose. No, I'm kidding. That's what we do. But it's interwoven and we just do it. And really, even while we're doing it, we do it We hope to do it from the position of the observer and really with a focus on the higher. And DK says this can be done, this needs to be done, and this is what our point in this story is about. We're not to run off to a cave, we're to do the work. I'm sorry about the interruption, but it's going to happen. So let's do this 34th sutra. The peace of the chitta is also brought about by the regulation of the prana or life breath. Students will do well to note that Patanjali includes pranayama, or the science of the breath or pranic energy, among other methods for arriving at the peace of the chitta. He does not, however, lay any special emphasis upon it. As has been earlier pointed out, pranayama is a term which can be used to cover 3 processes, all interrelated and allied. And we should intelligently understand what can calm the body down. We should understand the positive breath, the negative breath, and a neutral breath, as to what can energize us, what can relax us, and what our resting breath should be like. That's just intelligent use of this vehicle. So not to say we need to go doing all sorts of breaths of fire and all this other breathing exercises. But let's see what is said here. The science of rhythmic living, or the regulation of the acts of daily life through the organization of time and the wise utilization of space. Through this, the man becomes adept, a creator on the physical plane and cooperator in the plans of the hierarchy as they demonstrate in cyclic evolution. The science of the centers, or Laya Yoga, is the application of the law to the forces of nature and the scientific utilization of those forces by man. It involves the passing of certain septonits of energy through the centers, up the spine, and into the head by a certain specified geometrical progression. This makes a man a master psychic and unfolds in him certain latent powers, which when unfolded, put him in touch with the soul of all things and with the subjective side of nature. It is significant to note that this mode of arriving at peace follows upon the method of sane, wholesome living and its consequent result, a sound physical body. Later on, when Patanjali again refers to the regulation of the breath and of the energy currents, he places it as the 4th means of yoga and states that only when right poise has been achieved, the 3rd means, as a result of keeping the commandments of the rules, means 1 and 2, is the regulation to be attempted. Is this regulation to be attempted? Students would do well to study these means and note how interest in the centers is only permissible after a man has so balanced his life and purified his nature that danger is no longer possible. And we've talked about these dangers because these energies, they can be misappropriated and take on a life of their own where where we can't really control it. And it kind of runs away if we're not in control. It can run away with us and we can fall back into ignorance, and it can be worse, is what is said. And that reference is often made by the Bible, where the man sweeps his house and gets rid of all of the, he gets the bad energy out, or there was he casted out a demon, or a devil or something. And then he swept his house out, made it clean. And then it became again 7 times worse than it was before. Because something, whatever was let in, and things can become worse. So before the guy had one demon, he cast it out. The house was made clean. He allowed it in, and when it came back in, it came in with a whole slew of negative aspects there, and he's lost again to ignorance. So we want to make sure that these dangers are no longer possible, because thought follows, or energy follows thought. And if we allow our thoughts to run away, it can go very quickly if we don't maintain our focus. But if we do maintain our focus during that times where that energy is significant, then that much more growth is possible as well. So the more growth possible, the more of a chance for destruction at the same time, but that's controlled by us essentially, and the will. And this is a period that has to be worked through. It's the battleground. Right? The mind can be trained. This is the 35th. I think this is the last one we're doing for the day. Yeah, we're going to stop at the 35th today. The mind can be trained to steadiness through those forms of concentration which have relation to the sense perceptions. Okay, the mind can be trained to steadiness through those forms of concentration which have relation to the sense perceptions. Okay, well, let's see what we're going to get into this. It doesn't stick right out at me here. I hope it does for you. We are dealing with those forms of unfoldment and of control which eventuate in what has been called gracious peace. We have seen that correct group relations and rhythmic living will produce that condition wherein stillness of the vehicles or of the sheaths is attained, and the lower man can then adequately reflect the higher or spiritual man. Now we touch upon certain aspects of the Raja Yoga philosophy, and the key to the understanding of this sutra is found in the word detachment. The aspirant, as he makes his sense contacts and through the medium of the 5 senses, comes into touch with the phenomenal world. The aspirant will gradually assume more and more the position of onlooker, or what DK often we call observer. His consciousness therefore shifts slowly out of the realm of the sense vehicles into that of the dweller in the body. It is interesting to note here, the Hindu teaching upon the uses of the tongue and the entire region of the nose and the palate. The Orthodox Oriental teaching gives the following suggestions. Concentration upon the tip of the nose. Smell result is perfumes. Concentration upon the root of the tongue results in the senses hearing, and results in sounds. Concentration on the tip of the tongue is taste, We have flames, concentration upon the middle of the tongue touch, vibration, concentration upon the palate is sight, pictures, and visions. And these are more etheric. Let me see just 1 second here if we can make sense of this. So just give me a second. Oh, dang, I'm not sharing my screen right now, am I? Oh, I'm sorry about that. Shoot. I'm going to remedy that here in a minute. And we'll get back to this screen. But right now, I'm going to share the screen with I'm going to share this screen. And this is our chart. We're talking about these here, physical plane, are related to the mouth in this area that we're talking about is more related to speaking. The ear, the tongue and taste. All right, so we're seeing all right, so if you can, this is important here. So this is on page 189 of a Treatise on Cosmic Fire. And this is worth digging into here because we're talking about these senses right over here, right? And assuming these being the higher expressions of them. So we're being guided here a little bit, right? So the first sense, hearing, we have physical hearing is related also to clairaudience, higher clairaudience, comprehension of the 4 sounds, and then the beatitude. And then you can see why we pulled this up now. All right, so then the second sense, touch, and then these are these expressions: physical sight, clairvoyance, higher clairvoyance, divine vision, and realization. And then taste, which is what we're, imagination, discriminate. So it's setting us off in a sense, right? So there's a lot of correlation that can be done here. There's a lot of mixed matching or lines that can be drawn to add up to a very deep understanding and a visual depiction of what we're discussing right now. Not saying that it can be grasped fully and understood. That's not necessarily true. I don't even claim to really get it. But we're absorbing this, and it is getting assimilated and synthesized. So that's the point. We're working through it and with it, and we can see that this physical smell is related to emotional idealism, spiritual discernment, idealism, and all knowledge. Now, So the sense of these senses are, bringing more than what is anticipated here. The aspirant must not literalize these things nor seek blindly to meditate, for instance, upon the tip of the tongue. The lesson to be learned under the law of analogy is that the tongue typifies the creative faculty, the third aspect in its fivefold nature. The relation of the five senses, as synthesized here in the region of the mouth, to the five rays forming the synthesis governed by the Mahachohan, director of the third ray aspect upon our plane, will be found illuminating. This is the relation of the five senses to the five rays forming the synthesis governed by the Mahachohan will be found illuminating. And quickly, as you can see here, we've got the five senses, and they are related to the five rays from the top, from the physical plane, working from the bottom up. And this being 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, working up to the atmic plane. The atmic plane being where all knowledge will be found at the top of that, right? Idealism found here, spiritual discernment found at the top of the mental and the mental permanent atom, and emotional idealism will be astral, and I'm sorry, I'm going the wrong way. All now, oh yeah, we're going backwards. Physical smell being obviously seen down here. And this is very deep. There's a correlation here with the subplanes as well. So smell being the most etheric, it looks like, of them. So you're working from here, gaseous, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. So we're working up from here as well. When we've got hearing, will be found on gaseous. Now we're working upwards. Touch and feel would be here, the fourth. The third, related to sight. The second related to taste, and the fifth related to smell, also related to the planes. So now this is something that you would work out in your own beingness. I want to show you that all of these have a correlation. And there's process in this, and it will bring things together for us. All right. And we'll be found that students would find it valuable to work out the analogy between these five rays and the five senses and the mouth as the organ of speech. As the study is carried forward, it will be seen that two other physical organs, the pituitary body and the pineal gland, correspond to the remaining two aspects, love, wisdom, and organizing power, will, or purpose. So we're talking about the word, we're talking about the third aspect, we're talking about speech. Wait, are we talking about speech here? Yeah, the organ of speech, the mouth as the organ of speech. This is all bringing that together. This is the creative, intelligence, intelligent, creative aspect, the third aspect related to matter. So all these things are really helping us understand this vehicle and what it's all about. And at some point, it will be illuminating. These 7 points in the head, and all are found within a comparatively small area, are the symbols in physical matter of the 3 great aspects manifesting as the 7. And there's a relation between the 4th as well, the being the bridging, right, which is the plane of the soul, which is the lower plane of the spiritual triad, which is the Buddhic plane. And that's this, it brings together the top 3 with the bottom 3 and with the lower 3 worlds. And this is all very deep, and this is what we're working through. This is the work this is what we're doing. We're putting these things together and learning about the way the mind is put together, essentially, here. The way this is all put together. And this is the material that helps bring us and focus us on the higher planes, raising the vibration of the body and lifting us up, as it's understood. The aspirant therefore assumes the position of the ruler of the senses, and as the analyzer of all his sense perceptions, he gradually becomes more mentally concentrated, and the advanced yogi can identify himself at any moment with any one of the ray energies to the exclusion, where desired, of the others. I hope that makes sense. And this is just a matter of putting ourselves in those centers and in that space, and working in that way, and being able to make that shift, that will. And using this body, using this vehicle very intelligently. The student is warned not to imagine that this gracious peace can be achieved through definite meditation upon any specific sense, through an understanding of the laws of creation and of sound, through a consideration of the sounding board of the mouth and the method whereby speech becomes possible, and through the throat, I want to say. A knowledge of the world creative processes can be arrived at, and the man can achieve an understanding of the laws whereby all forms come into being. The senses of all yogis are naturally abnormally acute, and this fact should be remembered. So it's about becoming very sensitive to these different functions, and that requires control of the mind. We have to access the subtle. We have to be able to access the subtle, because everything we're talking about here is beyond the physical. So we have to get beyond it and work to become more subtle, which means our thoughts have to become very subtle as well. And so we're working through this physical plane, the grossness, the denseness of it, and we're allowing ourselves to become subtle in all the three lower world, in all the bodies. So these higher subtleties can be sensed and picked up on. Otherwise, we will not know it. They're there, but we have no access to them when you're gross. And I don't mean the word gross in terms of that you're gross as a human being. I mean, when our mind is in gross, dense, places, there's no way when your energy is being expended at these high levels going out that you're going to be able to sense the very subtle realms of this. That's not possible, essentially. So that's what we're working towards. I mean, we're all working towards that. And that's the whole thing is becoming more inclusive and accessing more of the subtleness of it is how I understand it at the moment. And becoming free from attachment to it. So lots to think about. We did another 7 sutras today. I'm not sure how long we went because we started at 8 and it is now 17 minutes after 10 a.m. So I certainly know we went longer than I intended to today. And my thought was we would keep going with 7 sutras a day. And that may continue to be the case, but I'll look and see how long these, I don't want to make it, not trying to go for too long. But we can always access and pick up where we left off to. So if we go long, so what? In a sense, right? As long as we need to cover the material and cover it properly, we're not sticking to a timeline per se. I'll think we'll ponder on this. Okay, thanks. Have a good one. Lots of stuff to think about. See you tomorrow.